Hello, everyone. This is Fritz again, coming back with an announcement after lunch. So just as a heads up, we are about to head into our breakout sessions, our final and remaining session for the day. We have 3 breakout sessions. The first of which is focused on democratizing electrification. The second, the one seen here, is on load flexibility. And the third will be on battery energy storage and safety. So the way to navigate there, as you click on the link and are placed in your browser, that'll put you into a lobby. And then from the lobby, you'll be able to pick from any of the 3 topics and join there, and you move freely in and out. We'll note that all the sessions are recorded, so feel free to listen to the one of your choosing today, and then you'll be able to tune in to the others, at your choosing at a later time. And we're hoping to have those posted up hopefully no later than early next week. But feel free to relax for another second or another couple of minutes. I'll make this announcement once more for the folks that joined a little bit after lunch. And yeah, we will hope to start the breakout sessions in just another minute or 2. So thanks again for joining the morning session. I'll be right back. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Epic Symposium. I may have heard my announcement a moment ago, but if you are watching this from the lobby, thanks for joining us for our morning session. We had some very engaging discussions with our high-level policy leaders, as well as a terrific update from our entrepreneurial ecosystem partners on where they've been at, or how far they've come in the several years since they've started. We now are moving to the breakout sessions, where there are 3 options. To navigate there, again, when you click on the Zoom link, it'll bring you to a browser. And then when you click on the lobby, that will then show the listed breakout sessions. We have 3 for you this afternoon. The first is on democratizing electrification. The second is on load flexibility, the panel that you see here. And then the third is on battery energy storage and safety. So all these sessions will be recorded and posted at a later date, hopefully no later than early next week. So for this afternoon, feel free to pick the breakout session of your liking, and you can tune into the others at a different time. And we'll note that this is the last session of the day. This symposium ends at 2 p.m. So after the breakout session, feel free to log off, but we are excited to see you bright and early tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. again for our day 2. So again, if you are just joining us in the lobby, feel free to, the lobby will be streaming the breakout session 1.2. Otherwise, feel free to pick from the breakout sessions below and join to your liking. Thanks again.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this breakout session, which is focused on scaling up demand flexibility in California. My name is Aloke Gupta, and I will be hosting this session as a moderator. Brief intro, my day job involves leading a team of analysts in Energy Division of California Public Utilities Commission, focused on developing and implementing policies related to demand response and demand flexibility. So earlier this year, on June 1st, I believe, in response to Senate Bill 846, the California Energy Commission, in collaboration with the CPUC and CalISO, established a California statewide goal of enabling 7,000 megawatts of load shift by 2030. And by the way, the statute requires that the CEC update this load shift goal every 2 years. So the next update will presumably be expected around June 2025. So this session will specifically cover new technologies that could, one, improve the accuracy of predicting grid conditions, and secondly, facilitate grid flexibility by flexing demand through buildings, behind-the-meter batteries, as well as electric vehicles and other various flexible appliances that the customers will bring about to the various electrification efforts. So this session is divided into 3 parts. Initially, we'll have a round of presentations from the different speakers on the panel. And then we will go into a second part where I will start off some discussion with some questions from me. And then the third part, we'll take some questions from the audience. So as you hear the presentations and the discussion, feel free to put in your questions in the appropriate chat area. And we have an assistant collecting those questions, and we'll sort them through when we get to the third part. So with that, I would like to invite Marianne from LBNL to introduce herself and kick off the first presentation. Marianne?
Thank you so much, Aloke. It's great to be here today. I'm going to spend 5 minutes going through a high-level overview of some of the work that we're doing from something called the California Load Flexibility Research and Deployment Hub. And that's funded by the Electric Program Investment Charge, the EPIC program, and thanks to Matt Fung and Kadir Badir. Starting with a picture here from some work that we do with the Public Utilities Commission, and we've been helping to create the data sets to set that 7 gigawatt goal. And this is a picture that shows the 4 to 6 gigawatt hours that we can get every day from flexible load. So everything below that $150 per year per kilowatt hour is cheaper than a battery. And if we can get loads to be flexible, we can help create toward demand side technologies that help us use our renewable energy more efficiently. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is the basic concept, is to facilitate and understand what technologies are available to respond to continuous prices and support both the PUC and the CEC's activities around using price response to help get to that 7 gigawatt goal. And maybe 3 gigawatts of that can be from prices. So the concept is to use energy at the time of day when it's cleanest and cheapest, and to create tariffs that reflect those system conditions, and use less electricity during the high peak times where we're managing the duck curve and helping to integrate renewables with the grid. You'll see there I have a bullet of advanced controls and communications can help reduce bills up to about 10%. And there's a picture there of a building that has heat pump water heater, thermal energy storage, an electric battery, a heat pump, EVs. And we're trying to understand the kinds of technology that we need to build. This is not 100 hours of demand response or 200 hours, but this is every hour a year. And so CalFlexHub is testing a variety of devices. The picture on the right is, and the bottom is UC Merced, where we are using their on-site solar to charge that big thermal energy storage tank. And we're also trying to do things like integrate fans with smart thermostats and understand how to make the building more resilient. Even we may have batteries in those fans in the future. So if there's a power outage, you still have some cooling. Go ahead to the next slide. One of the key things that we're doing is trying to understand what are the ways that devices can receive the prices. They can get them directly through OEM clouds. They can get them through third parties, and the third parties may interact with the OEM clouds, and the third parties may have a variety of devices, not just a single device under their control. HVAC systems, EVs, hot water storage for heat pumps. Sometimes the control signal goes straight to a load controller, and that controller is local. It's not in the cloud. Or sometimes there could be a gateway in the building. You can imagine an integration box with hardware and software in large buildings, or a software gateway in a home. So the price is coming in one place and it's being managed through a variety of devices. We can translate these device intelligence using existing demand response rules, methods, or rules like a heat pump water heater may have a set of rules, or more advanced model predictive control that uses AI and machine learning. And we're very interested in understanding and supporting the variety of business models and how these models might interact with emergency demand response. We think we want both so that the customer is getting the best value. Go ahead to the next slide. This is my last slide. And we're testing over 20 technologies. CalFlexHub is really focused on buildings and EVs. So in general, we're looking at thermal energy systems, HVAC, water heating, refrigeration, but we also have pool pumps. So we're testing in single family homes, multifamily homes, small commercial, large commercial, and even campus scale. And the picture on the left shows an integrated heat pump with storage for domestic hot water and space conditioning. And we're developing and showing the types of algorithms for single family homes as well as multifamily homes that can listen to a price server. We're supporting the California Energy Commission's Market Informed Demand Automation Server, or MIDAS, that's trying to stream these prices in a very standardized way, and then working on the controls and demonstrating how much we can shape the electric load every hour of the year. And we're also working with SoCal Edison on the CalFuse demonstrations. So we're very interested in working with the utilities as well as many of the munis to help expand this technology and help get to scale and achieving 3 gigawatts of load shifting through price response and understanding the adoption potential incentives around these technologies. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Sorry, thank you, Marianne. Let me invite Rob from Stasis next. Please, Rob, go ahead.
Very much, Aloke. And thank you all for the opportunity to be here today. We're Stasis Energy Group. We've developed a thermal energy storage system. We are introducing it to the market, and let me give you a brief rundown of what it is and what we do. Next slide, please. So here's a brief introduction to our technology. Essentially, what we do is we develop a thermal energy storage system, which is installed into commercial buildings, wherein we go in and remove a section of the supply duct and in its place install an enclosure containing modules that incorporate bio-based phase change material that effectively charge during normal daily operation of the building. The building runs passively, although we do have a sophisticated control system installed at the rooftop level with proprietary algorithms. And of course, the product is fire rated and suitable for deployment in California. With respect to the operations of the unit, very simply, during normal daily operations, our product stands by and does absolutely nothing until the start of peak demand period, typically 4 to 9 p.m. At that point in time, our controller takes first position with respect to operations and commands to the package unit. And we reduce and limit the amount of time the compressor can run. And instead of using compressor-driven cooling, we use cooling provided by our charged thermal storage battery. It's a very simple system in its essence. You can see the awards that we've won. We are an avid participant and incredibly grateful for EPIC and the CEC for the funding and support that they provided. The projects are completed with respect to the last two. We are finishing up the bridge project, and we are working on the CalNext demonstration project. We work with CPUC, with the SCHIP, and we are involved in the RTP CalFuse project with 7 sites approved. Next slide, please. Very simple. Left is computer generated image of how we work. That's a packaged rooftop unit on the roof. You have a supply plenum coming down attached to an enclosure containing our phase change material, thermal storage media. The right-hand side is our product. It's not very sexy. It's not very exciting. If we do our job right, it looks like ducting. Very simple. With respect to the benefits for load flexibility, on site after site after site, we record the same results in excess of 60% peak period kW reduction. We achieved that by taking the compressor offline. On each of those sites, we're able to reduce, or shift 50% more energy from peak periods to off-peak periods. Additional benefits, 10 to 15% energy efficiency, significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions because we're shifting from carbon fuel source late in the day to sustainably sourced energy earlier in the day. It's a nice found metric there. And our technology is tunable so we can address changing hours of peak period and also in advance for CalFuse and real-time pricing. Next slide, please. With respect to our position as a developing technology in the energy space, we look at the landscape as follows and the potential impact we can make on the California grid. HVAC loads are arguably the largest addressable loads in California that we can go after. Our retrofit inventory, the existing buildings that are out there, we consider the 900-pound gorilla in the room. They're hard to get at, they're more expensive to achieve, but unless we address the inventory of existing HVAC units out there, we aren't going to achieve our goals. We look at it as an opportunity to take those efforts, specifically deploy them in disadvantaged and low-income markets, because again, we think potentially those markets are overlooked. With respect to the numbers, to give you an idea of our the performance of our technology, 1 megawatt of load avoidance is about 277 5-ton units installed with our thermal energy storage system. 277 5-ton units is about 100 buildings. So about every 100 buildings, we can deliver a megawatt of load avoidance. The market's very large. The numbers are hard to come by, but a 10% adoption of existing market is a significant step towards reaching the state mandate of 2030 of 7 gigawatts. GHG emissions speak for themselves. Regarding obstacles to adoption, we are seeking and doing whatever we can to influence the existence of progressive load shifting incentives for load flexibility or perhaps permanent load reduction. At the IOU level, updated tariffs reflecting the true value of permanent load reduction, and with respect to engagement with the CPUC, new or revised programs to promote market adoption. With that, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rob. Next, let's go to Cliff from OhmConnect. Cliff.
Thanks, Aloke, and thanks to the CEC, both for the opportunity to be here today, and also for your support over the last several years with EPIC grant funding. So yeah, I'm head of government affairs at OhmConnect. We are a residential demand response aggregator, and we also operate a 200,000 person or household virtual power plant in California. We were founded in 2014. And let's move on to the next slide, and I'll just kind of walk through what we do with our platform. So this slide shows what the platform looks like from the user's perspective. And so these screens show how you can keep track of the energy use in your home and your participation in our program. OhmConnect is really set up kind of like an airline rewards program. It's free to join, and then you earn rewards for saving energy at peak times. So when you sign up, you authorize your utility to share your smart meter data with us, so we know how much energy you use, and then we notify you with a text and an email when we're going to have an event. So when the grid is stressed or when the prices spike, and if you use less energy during that event than you normally would at that time of day, you earn rewards. And when we started out, OhmConnect was really a behavioral program. We notified users, and then there was going to be an event, and they would go around their house and turn things off. Now we're mostly automated. So we have, as I said, about 200,000 users. And when they sign up with us, they generally will also connect a device to our platform. Could be a smart thermostat, could be their refrigerator, we have smart plugs. They're little $5 to $10 plugs that plug into the wall. You can plug any appliance or light into it. and also could be batteries. So, users always have the ability to override our events. So if they don't want to participate, they can always override. The example I always use is I have a smart plug on my TV, and if the Warriors are coming on, I tend to override and watch the game rather than save energy on my TV at that point. But as I said, we have about 250,000 devices that generally we can control in real time. Next slide, please. So this slide really shows what it looks like from the grid's perspective. So, we're in pretty much constant communication with the grid and the grid operator and the energy market. So when the wholesale price of energy spikes, we dispatch our users in the day ahead and then also in the real-time market. So we can operate with a just 15-minute in the 15-minute market. And then the energy market pays us for our reductions, and then we pay our users. So last slide, please. And here you see OhmConnect sort of at the hub of a network of partnerships that we have developed to drive growth and also make it easier to engage residential customers. So, we found it really the most cost-effective way to grow is through partnerships with equipment manufacturers like Ecobee, Emerson, Google Nest, SunPower, LG, Carrier. We've got a lot of different partnerships with equipment manufacturers, and then also with CCAs and nonprofits. And in most cases, those partnerships, the partner will reach out and communicate with their customer and urge them to join OhmConnect. But increasingly, what we're doing is working with manufacturers to just put OhmConnect into their flow. So when you buy a new device and you set it up, that you'll have an option of joining OhmConnect at the same time. So just everything, again, is trying to make this as easy as possible from the user's perspective. And I look forward to questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. And we'll go to our last panelist, David Meyers from Polaris and Gridtractor. David.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me on the panel, as well as for the support through the epic journey, which I will describe. So we can go to the next slide. I am, as mentioned, founder and CEO of Gridtractor, which is electrifying agriculture, and Polaris Energy Services, which is the leader in demand flexibility for agriculture in California. And actually, a chronological journey might be the best way to describe both the technologies and how this fits in with both EPIC and the 7,000 megawatt goal that we're all focused on. So starting top left and going down and then to the right, I joined Polaris about 6 years ago to implement their first EPIC grant, which was Technologies and Strategies for Agricultural Load Management. And the purpose there was really to look at technologies and strategies on the customer side, as well as programs and market mechanisms to see how to get more irrigation pumping into what we are now calling demand flexibility. And the first work was really at the device and the individual pump level to understand both how we can control that in response to market signals, as well as to quantify and characterize the opportunities for demand flexibility. If you think of what Marianne presented in research, that was foundational to what we did. And it's kind of a top-down view of the demand flexibility opportunity. And we've looked at it from the bottom up, from an individual farmer. What does it take to change their irrigation pumping patterns? What could they respond to, and what sorts of timeframes? And that led to control technology as well as market integration technology, a broad look at all of the DR programs, and frankly, at another EPIC project, which was the RACE project, which is kind of morphed into CalFlexHub, and the understanding that dynamic prices would actually be the best way to get the most out of the agricultural sector. We tried that out at small scale, about a megawatt, and sure enough saw that we could shift about 2/3 of load out of the ramp hours with dynamic price signals in irrigation pumping, which was pretty good. We all then experienced the heat storm, and as one of the portfolio of projects that the commission approved after that to respond quickly, Polaris received another grant, this time focused less on technology development and more on deployment. And we had the opportunity to help develop the AgFit pilot with Valley Clean Energy and PG&E and Aloke's team at the Public Utilities Commission, which uses price signals to do exactly what we just described, but at a little bit bigger scale. And so now we're working more on the customer acquisition side and the integration with the price signals and making it work at the programmatic level. And in the first season, according to the evaluators, we're able to achieve, again, good load shift. You can see in the middle bottom graph, about 40% of load coming out of the ramp hours in response to those price signals. Then building on the technology that we had developed under these two grants, we saw the opportunity for vehicle electrification and the opportunity in the agricultural sector that hadn't quite emerged. And so building on those, formed a new company, Gridtractor, which I've now spun out from Polaris. And an EPIC grant there has given us the opportunity, again, to go back and build the kind of individual site level, deployment level hardware and software and solve the hard problems of vehicle to grid integration, of backup during a power safety shutoff, et cetera, et cetera. And with that, applied most recently for the Redwoods grant, which is, again, to get to deployment. So you see how, working with these EPIC programs, you kind of go from solving the micro problems at the individual site level and technology to working on the market adoption and integration. So those have been the last 6 years. And if you go to the next slide would be, I guess, my 4 big takeaways that lead into the conversation that we're having here. Again, borrowing heavily from Marianne, so with attribution. But at the top left, I think, really important to keep this framework in mind of the shape, shift, shed, shimmy. There's so many, we were talking in our waiting room about all the names being thrown around, demand flexibility, virtual power plants, et cetera. But the importance of first getting as much load off on a full-time basis as possible, and then moving down the chain. So, if in a few years we've gotten 6,000 megawatts instead of 7, but it's 1,000 megawatts are saved because of efficiency, that's even better. I've even seen in regulatory filings where people say, well, we need to make sure to maintain baseline so we have what to reduce. That's not the goal that we're all focused on, right? If we can get the load off all the time. Remember, the day before the event day, the peak load that day is the dirtiest, most expensive we have that's not an event. So this is why shaping, as we've heard, I think a little bit from Rob, responding every day as described in the other presentations, really making it so that dispatchable shed is as little as it can be is important, and really saving it for those emergency hours. My second, I guess, takeaway on the right is that there's so much that we can do, and there's a goal to sort of be all things to all people. So I've discovered that I only catch fish when I go where the fish are. So we need to focus demand flexibility on the places that there's flexible load, and go after that. It is fairly well concentrated, and so I see that as important. Obviously, that's why I've chosen agriculture and electric vehicles, as you can see there. But this is too urgent a priority to try to do everything at the same time. The bottom left, I think, is also really important. CEC has traditionally focused on basic technologies, and in my view has done a really good job of enabling companies like ours to also deal with the market side, and as the chairman discussed this morning, some of the procedural obstacles to energy technologies. But I think especially in our area of demand flexibility, that's going to be the game for the next few years. I mean, there are new technologies as described here that are useful, but making it all work, making the price signals work, or the dispatch signals, making the economics work, all of those things will be, I think, the make or break on whether we achieve this 7,000 megawatt goal. And then the final thing, the bottom right, unlike solar, batteries, a lot of things, demand flexibility at the end is about people. People make decisions. Cliff described the decision that we'll all beat him up on to watch the Warriors game instead of shifting load. But at the end of the day, we're dealing with the things that people and companies do every day. And all of our research and all of our programs and all of our price signals have to fit into their world so that they can respond as easily as possible and that the incentives are lucrative enough to do so. So if we keep the people at the center as we do this, we'll be successful. And with that, really appreciate the opportunity, Aloke, and look forward to sharing questions with the others.
Thank you, David. Yes, I appreciate all the panelists putting together these presentations. I see we have over 120 people attending the breakout sessions. So I assume that means that demand flexibility is of high interest among people. So let me see if we can take a few minutes to discuss a few issues that I like to key up, and then we'll transition to questions from the audience. Let me start with Marianne. Marianne, you spent some time talking about, and your team has done a lot of work on identifying the potential from different end users. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about what specific technologies or strategies that you think would be particularly promising in achieving our load-shaped goals set out by the CEC. And then I'll invite other panelists from, just jumping into the discussion as they see fit.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Aloke, and thanks again for moderating today's panel. It's great to see the attendance. So one of the biggest challenges is as we look at electrifying space heating and water heating, I'll talk a little about HVAC and water heating, as well as EVs, because that's where we're seeing a lot of the new load growth. If we think about putting in all those electric heat pumps, we want to make sure that we can communicate with them and we can use the mass of the building to try to move the load shape around from the HVAC systems. Now that traditionally we think about air conditioning and using that as a flexible load, but we're also going to be looking at space heating because we may become winter peaking of the net load with more electrification. And also electric vehicles are such an important part of our load flexibility ecosystem. We need to create incentives for customers to charge at the clean time of day and less around the dirtier times of the day and more expensive. And that is going to require working with OEMs as well as working with third parties and making sure that the convenience is acknowledged as well as the incentives and the greenhouse gas. So I think the controls and communication systems for these new electrified loads are some of the low-hanging fruit. I think thermal energy storage is an extremely valuable technology because thermal energy storage has a better round-trip energy efficiency than electric storage batteries with much less of a supply chain challenge. So the TES is a great technology, and we do need to think about how to incentivize moving a lot of that HVAC load with thermal energy storage. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Would other panelists like to chime in? Your thoughts about this, David?
Sure. I would just add one thing, and yeah, the winter peaking starts. Sorry, I have a dog in the background. Starts to speak to that, but we also need to consider the generation changes that we're going to have. So we have another goal of 30 gigawatts of offshore wind. So as we electrify, our supply curve is also going to change. So we've got I think all of us have the duck curve seared into our brains and maybe into our, DNA for the next generation. But it's not just that belly ramp that we need to address. So electric vehicles, for example, will take on additional importance if they can charge. And I've been out there in the middle of the night. That's when the wind blows offshore of Point Conception. And so we're going to want to absorb all of that. So the EV charging becomes especially important, as well as other end uses. And one of the ones that I focus on, irrigation pumping certainly can work then. Some of the process loads can work then. But there are others whose value may drop a little bit if they can't absorb the new generation that we have from offshore wind. So I think that's the other thing that we have that's not front and center right now that we have to keep our eye on for maybe the 5 to 10 year time frame.
Thank you. Cliff, I thought you raised your hand earlier. Go ahead.
Yeah, so and it's similar to, I think, definitely what Marianne was saying, but I think DOE has estimated right now that Americans are spending $10 billion a month on new appliances, that's EVs, smart thermostats, and storage that are all Wi-Fi enabled and can be controlled from your phone, and and those are all things that we control also as a provider. And so I think EVs will really dwarf the rest of the in-home loads that we're going to see over the next 10 years. I mean, when you look at what California has on its roadmap for EV adoption, by 2030, 50%, and by 2035, 100%. So it is, I think those loads are going to be absolutely essential for us to both incentivize and control, so that people are not coming home at 5:30 and plugging in their EV exactly when it's the worst time of the day. But again, and I agree with Marianne, it's making it easy for the customer to connect to a platform that will control that the EV charging, as well as I said, the smart thermostats and storage.
Let me just do a follow-up. This is sort of off the cuff. We have two constraint points in the grid, the generation capacity and distribution capacity. And I was wondering if you have thoughts about any particular technology or strategy being useful for generation versus distribution, or do you think the same demand flexibility helps both of them? Anyone?
And I guess what I would say is, I think that given the rapid adoption of EVs, we do not have enough time to ramp up generation between now and 2030, just given the supply chain issues, the permitting problems, and all the rest. So I do think that this is where demand flexibility has got to be a central part of that solution.
On the distribution side, I think we may need to look at the more command and control. So if we're moving towards really, price response at the, sort of the generation signal, there are two problems at the distribution level. One is the fact that if customers are making significant investments to respond, the signal can change very quickly as, a transformer gets installed, something breaks down, all of that type of stuff. The other interesting one is that the price signal could actually cause, a whole bunch of people. So if, Cliff gets everybody in the neighborhood into the program, and then there's a price and everybody starts charging their EV at the same time, that can actually be a problem, even if that's the correct signal to start with. So that's probably where, something that is more towards the dispatchable, an incentive that's predictable, where the customers will know that, there's some period of time that even if the economics on the circuit change a little bit, they can get their investment recouped. I think will be necessary. It will be hard price signals.
And I think adding to what David just said, I agree that we're going to get as much as we can with prices, but where do we need something more? And I think EV charging is the one place where we may want to, from midnight to 6 or 7 a.m. spread out that charging. And how do those things interoperate? I think that's one of our challenges in both the technology characteristics as well as the business models. And we want the consumer to get the most value out of participating in as many programs as they can. So when they sign up for enabling their device to communicate with a third party or with the utility program, they might be able to value stack. So I think that concept of value stacking and dynamic loads is new. We understand that for batteries. You hold some of that battery for a power outage or some sort of reliability event, but how we do that with flexible devices is something I think we need to continue to work on. Both the technology features and the customer agreements and the business models and the value proposition.
Thank you, Marianne. Let me pose another question and maybe ask Rob to kick that off. You have any thoughts? I mean, you talked about the large potential of HVAC coupled with thermal energy storage, providing significant load share potential. Can you talk a little bit about businesses? How do they go about participating in your efforts? Is it easy to demonstrate the value proposition, or what role do businesses have in helping you deploy the technologies?
Very good, Aloke. Very good question. I don't come from the energy industry. I don't have my history in that. And so when I look at developing a product and how to access the market, I look at it from the standpoint of what would I think if I were on the other side of the negotiating table? What's important to me? And I think universally across the board, we've done just an incredible amount of customer discovery to try and understand who our target market is and what are the factors that can compel somebody to engage in the opportunities that we're trying to present. Very simply, it's what impact is it going to make to me on a financial level? Everybody wants to participate, but your ability to participate is in large part going to be governed by what the cost versus what the return on your investment is going to be. By my experience, less than 5 years. 5 years is kind of the limit. If you're not going to see a payback within 5 years, it's a pretty tough move into the marketplace. If you can get to 3 to 4 years with the advent and introduction of progressive incentives, you'll see a line created at your front door because people want to do the right thing. And I think it's the responsibility of the group at large in this position to do what is best and try and compel and bring about those kind of opportunities. Our problem as a developer of thermal storage technology is that we're a little bit ahead of the curve from a product development standpoint relative to the state of incentives. For example, we're trying to engage with one program from the CPUC right now. We've been working for 9 months to work with the program. We just, in the last couple of weeks, got some feedback back, and the measurement and verification costs exceed the value of the benefit by about 5 to 1. It's not to say measurement and verification is not important, but there has to be a balance there. So my challenge as the leader of this company is to seek to find ways that I can compel appropriate incentivization or changes in tariffs or other programs that can make it advantageous to the end customer. Because at the end of the day, we can make all the policy changes we want, but unless we get the average California citizen to participate, we're not going to have the result we're looking for.
Thank you, Rob. Just a follow-up, and then we'll switch to questions from the audience in the interest of time. You mentioned some barriers, and I think you also highlighted something about updated tariffs. And I don't know if you were, with that comment, I don't know if you were referring to issues involving demand charge, but I mean, could you talk about the role of tariffs in the adoption of your technology, and how does the you also mentioned you were participating in CalFlexHub pilot. As you know,
Yes.
CalFlexHub has a very different design with respect to demand charge. So if you could just sort of connect those two pieces.
Absolutely. So to put some specifics to my prior comments, if I were to approach you as a customer right now, I'd look at the utility IOU that you are drawing your power from. I would look at the appropriate tariff schedule that your business is on, our target being commercial businesses. We've got 3 major IOUs that we're working with in the state of California. 2 of the 3 IOUs, the tariff creates about $1,000 a year benefit for adoption of our technology for a 5-ton thermal energy storage system, $1,000 a year. Okay. The other, and that number is derived completely from the reduction or avoidance of demand charges associated with peak energy consumption. The other utility, the benefit is about $200. There is no price that we can come up with that's going to make this product attractive in that area. And as a result, these are the sort of institutional changes that we're looking at. With respect to moving towards what you mentioned, the CalFuse or the dynamic price model, we are super, super excited about that opportunity. We've had projects in place that have been undergoing baseline and the performance M&V for the last 2.5 years. That as that's coming up, it's going to convert directly over to CalFuse, and we are very excited about the opportunity because the ability to work in the cloud and develop algorithms and systems that look at the dynamics of real-time price changes from the different price points is absolutely exciting to us. We think that there's a tremendous opportunity for growth and development there.
Thank you, Rob. David, I presume that you might also have some perspective on this.
So specifically the rate time of use versus.
Yeah, the role of demand charges in terms of driving demand. Yeah.
So I guess two things. So first of all, in our work, one of the big benefits has been rolling the demand charges into hourly price signals. So especially where you have, as in agriculture, loads that can vary from year to year. And by the way, I think we'll see this to some extent with charging as well. Being able to assign that to each hour means that you can get the benefit out of each hour of load shift. And it makes management easier. It makes, it's a facilitator. I think that, the challenge will be showing it, and we've seen this, and that the customers making clear what that value proposition is, calibrating the price signals so that they can achieve the same benefit as if they've used a whole bunch of other technology to avoid demand charges in the past. Sometimes it's great. The demand charge can impose a one and done type thing, right? If you hit that demand charge, it doesn't matter what you do the rest of the month, and that's not the behavior that we want. But on the flip side, calibrating the prices will, probably be the most important task that we have, so that we can incentivize correctly, not overcompensate, not undercompensate.
Thank you. So we are at 1:45. I see we have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So let's try to sort through them. We have one question from anonymous attendee. By the way, the panelists, if you can also look at the Q&A box along with me. So the one at the top here from anonymous, I think that's directed to you, Cliff. You use a separate utility aggregator for OhmConnect, or do you integrate with the utilities yourself?
So we don't actually integrate with the utilities, but what we do is we are the aggregator. We aggregate savings of our users, and then we sell them in the energy market, and we sell them in two different ways. We both sell to load serving entities as capacity. So primarily the load serving entities that we sell to are CCAs as opposed to IOUs, although we have had contracts with IOUs as well. And then we also sell in the energy market. So as I said, we are able to participate in the real-time energy market and can sell that way. So those are the two ways that we earn revenue.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Rob, do you see a way to have the thermal energy storage work in this aggregator model? Rob?
I'm sorry, Aloke. Would you repeat the question, sir?
I was just wondering if there's a way to have the type of technology you are deploying, have that play a role in an aggregator type of business model that Cliff just talked about.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I've never had the opportunity to work with Cliff, but I'm looking forward to following up with him afterwards. One of the market opportunities that we've discussed internally is how do we take advantage of the opportunities that exist that will allow us to get our technology into the marketplace more effectively and more robustly. I think working either with or potentially as our own aggregator, the opportunities are boundless. There's a great opportunity there. But again, if you look at that environment, if you look at an aggregator from the standpoint of not just an aggregator, but an energy service provider, it's a question of ownership of the units, whether or not you're going to be able to pull down federal tax incentives that would be aligned with that, and what kind of return on their investment would be. Very simply, though, following what I believe might be Cliff's model, would be if we are able to aggregate the number of users who adopt our technology within a certain geography or locale. I think that presents unique opportunities to function as an aggregator, which would bring greater benefit to the ratepayers and hopefully bring on additional market adoption. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So let's go to the next question from Claudia. I think it's directed to Marianne. I think they're looking for some clarification here, Marianne. I guess you can read it as well. So you want to just respond to that?
Yeah, so it said with electrification, it seems that shifting peak won't be needed in the future, at least in California. Does that sound right? No, actually, I think we need it more, and here's why. Because as we have more renewables on the grid, it's actually harder over the day to link supply and demand than in the traditional way. It used to be when we had a supply, we could put the throttle on the power plants and ramp them up and down to meet load. And on those hot summer days, it was just expensive to do that. So we did DR. But now, because of renewables, there's a shape of the renewables, the wind and the solar. And so we want demand to be more flexible to integrate. As we have more EVs, we need to spread out that load. And again, try to soak up as much as that clean energy. And with HVAC, heat pumps, air conditioning, heating and cooling, and water heating, we still have an outside air temperature linkage. So on a really cold winter morning or a hot summer day, we have peaks, but we also have those spring days where we might still be heating and there's a lot of sun, and we want to, so we actually want more flexible load because that's going to help us manage that ramp at the end of the day and better have less overgeneration. We didn't talk about overgeneration. We can have 15% of the electricity that we generate from renewables that we can't even use it. So we actually we want to reduce overgeneration. And if we can use flexible load, it's much cheaper than grid scale batteries. That's the key. We need storage, and as much as we can get loads to be flexible, they're a type of virtual storage.
Thank you, Marianne. We'll go to the next question from Dan Fletcher. I think that's directed to you, David. I assume you collected some data for this summer season, as well as I know you have some from last summer. I think Dan is interested in seeing that data. Have you presented it anywhere? I mean, is it in the public domain that people can see?
Yes. So for irrigation pumping, there is the actual EPIC report, which I can put the link in the chat. And then there's the M&V for the AgFit pilot, which is publicly available as well. In terms of this as charge discharge, so I assume that's on the agricultural electric vehicle side. And that as yet we're sort of in the early stage of that process where we're developing the first few implementations. And so we do not yet have those electric farm vehicles, as we call them, responding to price signals. And I hope to have that in 2024.
Any sort of headlines as far as what have you observed for this summer versus last summer as far as the CalFlexHub pilot that you've been involved in?
So last summer, the price signal was very strong. We started the pilot in August, and so we saw that 40% come out of ramp hours. Actually, I know the M&V folks said 50, so I'll take the extra 10. This year, we're still accumulating the data, but the price signal was actually weaker. And this, frankly, is something that we're all going to have to take into account. Sometimes just because of market forces, the signal will not be as strong. And so if customers then do what we ask, which is to respond to the price signal, but they say, well, there's not as much juice in the squeeze here, is that bad? Or is that just what we expect to see? If there's a weaker signal, then we should see less shift. So I think we'll see less on a percentage basis this year, but not because folks were throwing away the price signal, it just wasn't as strong.
Thank you, David. Let me skip ahead 2 questions and we'll come back to them. But there's a question from another anonymous attendee. This is second to the last one. They're asking about what are some of the major process loads that have load shift potential that was shown on David's slide. I think they're referring to the slide, David. I think you showed something from CEC.
Yes.
Are you able to elaborate on that, or maybe Marianne is?
A little. I would say this comes from CEC and from Marianne, but just want to note there's some ag examples here and it was not referring only to agricultural process, but the process loads overall in the state. So I'd kick it back to Marianne.
Yeah, so industrial process control can often be flexible. Compressed gases, large gases have been very excellent participants in demand response programs. Food processing, as noted. Large water systems. We haven't talked much about water, but the state is the largest participant in demand response at the State Water Project. Municipal water and pumping. Pumping can be very flexible. And in general, even steel recycling, we've had DR participants. So large industrial process control is often flexible.
Thank you. So let me try this question from Mariko. It's a little bit difficult to unpack. So how do we know how much demand flexibility we really have, considering people may want to use their HVAC batteries and EVs, etc., to directly support them in these situations? And these situations are referring to, extremes that might come about through emergencies or environmental factors. So to the extent so I think the question is sort of setting up a competition between customer wanting to use the technology one way, and so then how can the grid count on demand flexibility from the same devices that the customers may be wanting to do something different with? So anybody want to take a crack at how to balance that tension or trade-off between customer demand and what the grid needs, so that in such a way that we can count on it?
Well, I'll start off and other folks can jump in, but I guess I think actually the way I would look at this is we have, as I said, 200,000 households participating in our program. Altogether, all the demand, and we're, I think, the largest demand response program residential in the state. So the question is not, in my mind, how much flexibility there is with the very few number of households who are currently participating, but how do we get 2 million or 9 or 10 million to be participating? That's really the question. And I think that's, some of that is regulatory and how do we create a pathway so that there's not one little tiny OhmConnect here, but rather a whole industry that's coming in to help us flex demand in the state. And I think that's really, I think the challenge that we have, and it is more of a regulatory challenge than it is, whether consumers are going to decide to turn off their or turn their thermostats up or down. Because I think once we have millions, then we're going to have a lot greater potential to actually flex loads the way that we need to.
Well, I can jump in because I'm guilty. So when we have a forecast for demand response events, I crank up the amount of that my battery reserves, because I need to manage demand response events for my home office. And so, that's an anecdote, but a lot of people are doing that who are not, let's say, demand response program managers. So I think there are two pieces. One is we have to acknowledge that, and I think we've talked about this, that climate itself gets in the way of solving climate problems. So as we have hotter and hotter days, people will want their HVAC. So HVAC, how do you address that? By having tighter building envelopes, all of the technologies that make it possible to shift. When you look at the other loads, things like the EVs and batteries and pumping and so on, I think it's a positive feedback loop. So, we had the really scary situation in 2020, 21 was okay last year. We all did really well, right? We can clap ourselves on the back. The more we do that, the less people will feel like they need to hold back essentially in order to get through those events. So, we do well by doing better, I guess.
Appreciate that. So, let me just try another question off the cuff here. We are in an EPIC symposium, and CC has been playing a major role in providing EPIC R&D funding. I'm wondering if you guys can comment on what how does policy and regulatory framework what's needed in the context of policy and regulatory frameworks to evolve and advance demand flexibility in a way that's complementary to EPIC funded R&D. I mean, how do the two work together? That's what I'm trying to get at. Thoughts about that? Marianne?
Yeah, I'd be happy to chat. So I'll make it quick because I know we're at time. We obviously need both, and we need innovation. We need EPIC to help us develop and demonstrate the technologies, and then the regulatory frameworks to help us scale them. And we need to understand what barriers are we trying to overcome. And it may be the incentives, like Rob was saying, or with Cliff, it may be about customer awareness and customer engagement. And it also may be about what tariffs are we developing. So it's kind of the feedback between those two that we need more communication between the CEC activities and the PUC ones, and getting the utilities excited about investing in these things with incentives so that customers feel like they're getting something to sign up, and then we do understand what is the customer's experience, and what are the barriers to adoption, and that takes both the CEC and the PUC working together, and this dual participation where we have dynamic prices with kind of emergency DR is critical for us to get to scale.
We have one more minute, Aloke. Let me just throw one more big idea out there, which is, in California, we developed a renewable portfolio standard, and then we also developed a goal for batteries. And we set aggressive goals, and then we've met those goals. We achieved them. And I think we need a similar thing. I think we need a procurement goal for DR, so that it is a sense of signal to the industry. The state is committed to this. We're going to achieve it, and therefore you should invest in this. And so that would be the other thing I'd throw out here at the last minute.
And if we have 2 seconds, I would add, I agree with that completely. I think, first of all, credit is due. The coordination has gotten much, much better. I mean, 6 years ago, it was almost like two different worlds. I think there is still some aligning that can help, that if we're looking for CEC to provide a push to something that the CPUC wants to implement in programs, that the timing lines up. Because when you apply for an EPIC grant, you're on a certain schedule, and then there's the regulatory schedule of the CPUC, and having those line up so both can count on each other, the CPUC that there's funding for what's needed, and the CEC that there's a place to implement the technology that they're funding is critical. The other thing I would say is that incentives may need to be higher. They do need to be higher at the beginning to get the first adopters, to get the companies rolling. That doesn't always work in the pure market regulatory framework. But if you look at solar, exactly the things that Cliff just mentioned, you started with very large incentives, and look, reduce them over time, and everybody's, crying about it. But now we've been able to reduce the incentives because there's so much solar, and we say, okay, well, now let's move on to the next goal. I think we need to think about demand flexibility that way, that the early adopters will benefit more by being early adopters. And then, over time, that will bring everyone in at closer to, market prices or market values.
Thank you, David. We are past our session time here. So I would like to thank the panelists from taking time out and preparing the presentations and participating in the discussion. And also thank you to the attendees for participating in this session. I think collectively, we think that demand flexibility has a very critical role to play in achieving California's clean energy goals. There's clearly a lot of work to be done. I would note that both California Energy Commission and the CPUC have multiple initiatives focused on demand flexibility. So I would encourage all the participants here to be actively involved in those initiatives and help the two institutions help everybody in terms of achieving the demand flexibility goals. And then I encourage everyone to join again tomorrow to continue with the EPIC Symposium. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Aloke and others. Some of y'all may be returning to the lobby at this point as we conclude our day one. Just want to thank everyone for joining today. We have an exciting day two tomorrow that also goes from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Our sessions will include a discussion on CEC and ARPA-E. ARPA-E is the DOE federal funding program that focuses a lot on earlier stage technologies, as well as a panel with some of our environmental justice partners. We have some exciting projects that really demonstrate how to conduct that, how to get really robust results and outcomes with that close community engagement. And then our breakout sessions for tomorrow, we have one on building decarbonization, as well as wildfire safety and resilience. And then last one on electric vehicles and the future of that, that'll be moderated by Commissioner Monahan at the CC. With that, I again want to bid you all farewell. Hope you all had a very robust day of discussion and some insights that led you to think maybe a little differently of where clean energy technology is at and what the possibilities are. And so with that, we will wrap up. Hope to see you all bright and early at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thanks again.